My name is Elena Voss, and I was 29 years old the night my own sister tried to destroy me at my wedding. I saw her do it. Not in some blurry suspicion, not in a panicked imagination, but right there, under the soft string lights of our family vineyard in Napa Valley. Her manicured fingers moved with practiced ease over my champagne flute while everyone around us laughed and clinked glasses. A small white packet disappeared into the bubbling golden liquid. She glanced around once, smiled that perfect, older sister smile she'd perfected over the years, and stepped back like she had only been straightening a napkin. I didn't scream, I didn't grab her wrist, I didn't let a single muscle in my face betray what I had just witnessed. Instead, I waited until she turned toward our parents, lifted my glass quietly, and switched it with the one she had left beside her own place card. Then, when the toasts began, I raised a plain glass of sparkling water with the rest of the guests. Vanessa took the drink meant for me. She brought it to her lips, looked straight at me, and said loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, "To my little sister Elena, finally stepping into the spotlight, my surprise for you is coming very soon." She smiled like she had already won. If you're watching this right now, pause for a second and ask yourself, what would you have done in that moment? Would you have confronted her in front of 200 guests? Or would you have done exactly what I did and waited? Exactly 35 minutes later, her hand started trembling around the microphone. The big projector screen behind the dance floor flickered to life on its own, showing a folder titled "The Truth About Elena." A few guests chuckled at first, thinking it was some cute surprise video. But Vanessa's face went pale, her confident smile cracked, the room slowly fell silent as the first slide appeared. That drink was only the beginning. Before I tell you everything that happened that night, the years of quiet betrayal, the forged documents, the jealousy that had been growing like poison ivy behind our family's beautiful vineyard, I want to know about you. What time is it where you are right now? Are you watching from your couch with a cup of tea, or maybe sneaking a few minutes during your lunch break? Drop a comment and tell me the weather where you are. I read every single one. It helps me feel like we're sitting across from each other, just two people talking about the kind of family pain that no one posts about on Instagram. Because if you've ever had someone who was supposed to protect you instead sharpen a knife behind your back, this story is going to feel familiar. And if you've ever been the good sibling who stayed quiet to keep the peace, then you already know how heavy that silence can get. Let me take you back just a little. The wedding itself had been perfect up until that moment. The ceremony under the oak trees at our family vineyard was everything I had dreamed of. My husband Marcus cried during his vows. My best friend Sophie squeezed my hands so tight before I walked down the aisle and whispered, "You deserve this peace, Elena. Hold on to it." For one beautiful hour, I actually believed her. But receptions have a way of revealing what people really think when the champagne starts flowing. Vanessa had always been the sun in our family, the golden daughter. The one who could charm investors, charm our parents, and still find time to remind me, in that sweet voice of hers, that I was only shining because she allowed it. I had spent 29 years orbiting her light, making myself smaller so the family didn't have to choose sides. Until that night. Until I switched the glasses. Until I decided that the woman walking down the aisle in white wasn't going to be the same woman who left the reception. If you've ever had to earn your place in your own family, type the word boundaries in the comments. I see you. I was you. What Vanessa didn't know was that I had been quietly preparing for this moment longer than she realized, not because I wanted war, but because deep down I finally understood that peace built on lies is just another kind of cage. 35 minutes. That's how long it took for everything she had planned to start unraveling. And by the end of the night, the person exposed on that projector screen wasn't me. It was her. But before we get to that moment, I need to tell you how we got here. How years of favoritism, hidden resentment, and one inheritance changed my sister from family into something much more dangerous. Stick with me. This one gets heavy, but I promise the ending is worth it. My parents named her Vanessa because it sounded elegant, like something you'd put on a wine label. And that's exactly what our family business became under her influence. Elegant on the outside, carefully bottled, and very expensive. Voss Family Vineyards had been in California's Napa Valley for 3 generations. My grandmother built it from dusty hills and stubborn vines into something people drove hours to visit. When she passed, she left partial control of the trust to both of us, but with one quiet condition only I knew about. I was named as the successor if the business ever needed steady hands instead of flashy ones. Vanessa never forgave that. Growing up, I was always the quiet one. The younger sister who followed rules, got good grades without bragging, and smiled through family dinners while Vanessa told stories that made everyone lean in. She was 2 years older, taller, louder in all the ways that mattered to our parents. When she won a regional beauty pageant at 17, my father toasted her for 20 minutes. When I earned a full scholarship to study viticulture and business at UC Davis, my mother said, "That's nice, honey, just don't let it go to your head." I told myself it didn't hurt. That was my first mistake, believing that swallowing pain made me stronger instead of just quieter. If you've ever been the child who had to work twice as hard for half the recognition, you know exactly what I mean. Type second place if that was you. Vanessa had a gift for making her selfishness look like confidence. She could charm wine critics, charm our biggest distributors, and still find time to casually mention at family gatherings that I only got opportunities because people felt sorry for the bookish little sister. When I started developing our sustainable wine line 3 years ago, the one that actually increased revenue by 28%, she smiled in public and told investors it was cute that I was playing with eco-friendly ideas. But behind closed doors, the mask slipped. I still remember the night she cornered me in the tasting room after a successful launch event. The string lights were still twinkling outside and guests were laughing. She gripped my arm hard enough to leave faint marks. "You think you're saving the vineyard?" she whispered, her perfume sharp and expensive. "Grandma gave you that trust authority because she felt guilty. I'm the one who actually carries this family." I didn't argue that night. I just nodded, went home, and started keeping better records. Not because I wanted to fight her, but because something deep in my gut told me her charm was running out of room to hide what she was doing. Marcus was the first person who saw the full picture. We met 2 years ago when he came to the vineyard as a potential investor for his restaurant group. He wasn't impressed by Vanessa's polished presentations. Instead, he spent hours walking the rows with me, asking real questions about soil health and long-term sustainability. 6 months later, he proposed under the same oak tree where we held our ceremony. When I told Vanessa, her congratulatory hug lasted half a second too long. "Finally found someone who doesn't mind playing second fiddle," she said with that sweet laugh. "Just make sure he knows the vineyard comes first." Marcus heard it. He didn't say anything then, but later that night he held me and said, "Elena, you don't have to shrink yourself anymore. Not with me." Those words planted something dangerous in me, the belief that I deserved to take up space. Sophie, my best friend since college, saw it too. She helped plan the wedding and kept warning me that Vanessa was asking too many questions about the projector setup and the guest list. I brushed it off. I still wanted to believe that blood meant something. That on my wedding day, even Vanessa would choose family over whatever resentment had been growing inside her like mold on old barrels. I was wrong. The morning of the wedding, I found a small note tucked into my bridal suite mirror. No signature, but I knew her handwriting. "Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts, little sister. Some truths have a way of coming out at the perfect time." I folded it carefully and put it in my emergency folder, the one Sophie teased me about. "Only you would bring legal documents and backup evidence to your own wedding," she laughed. But she helped me organize it anyway. Trust statements, financial reports, emails, and recordings of conversations I had started saving months earlier. Not because I expected war that night, but because I had finally learned that hope without preparation is just another form of denial. As I stood in my wedding dress, adjusting my veil, I looked at myself in the mirror and made a quiet promise. Whatever happened tonight, I would not leave as the victim. I would not let Vanessa rewrite my story in front of everyone I loved. The ceremony was magical. Marcus looked at me like I was the only person in the world. When we kissed, the guests cheered so loudly the vines themselves seemed to shake. For those precious minutes, everything felt possible. Then the reception started and the masks came off. Vanessa moved through the crowd like she owned the vineyard, which, in her mind, she still believed she did. She laughed with our parents, posed for photos, and kept glancing toward the projector area with a look I couldn't quite read. I noticed the bartender too, a new face I didn't recognize from our final vendor meeting. He kept looking at Vanessa, then at me. That was the second warning. The first had come 3 nights earlier when Vanessa called me, voice honey sweet. "I'm so happy for you, Elena. Just remember, no matter what happens, family looks out for each other." I didn't sleep much after that call. Now, standing near the head table with my new husband's hand in mine, I felt the shift. The air had changed. Vanessa was building something and I could feel it in my bones. If you've ever sensed danger from someone who smiles while holding the knife, you know that cold, clear feeling. That's where I was 35 minutes before the projector turned on. Still hoping I was wrong, still preparing in case I wasn't. Because by then I had already decided. I wasn't going to be the quiet little sister anymore. The afternoon before the wedding, the vineyard looked like something out of a dream. White chairs lined the rows between the vines, fairy lights waited to glow at sunset, and the air smelled of fresh lavender and aged oak. I walked the aisle with Sophie one last time, practicing my steps in flats because my heels were still in the suite. She kept glancing toward the barn where the reception would be held. "Elena," Vanessa asked the videographer 3 times about the slideshow order, she said quietly. She also wanted to know who was handling the projector remote. I stopped walking. A breeze moved through the leaves, and for a second I let myself feel the weight of what she was saying. I had approved every photo, every song, every detail. There was supposed to be one short montage of childhood pictures, nothing more, but Vanessa had always been good at finding cracks in plans and widening them just enough to fit her agenda. I squeezed Sophie's hand. "Thank you for watching. Keep your eyes open tonight, but don't confront her. I need to handle this my way." Sophie looked at me for a long moment, the same way she had in college when I was drowning in group projects while Vanessa partied. "You've changed," she said softly. "In a good way, just don't let her dim your light again." That word, again, stayed with me. There was one memory I kept coming back to that day. I was 24, standing in my grandmother's study the week after her funeral. The lawyer had just explained the trust terms. Vanessa was outside on the phone, charming a distributor. Grandma had pulled me close and whispered, "The vines need patience, Elena, not flash. You have the patience, she has the flash. Don't ever apologize for that." I never told Vanessa about that conversation. Maybe that was where the real fracture started. If you've ever received quiet wisdom from someone who saw you clearly while the rest of the family only saw what was convenient, type "seen" in the comments. Those moments stay with you. Marcus found me later that afternoon near the oak tree. He wrapped his arms around me from behind and rested his chin on my shoulder. "You okay, wife-to-be?" The word wife still made my heart flutter. I leaned into him. "I'm trying to be. Vanessa has been extra Vanessa lately." He turned me around so I could see his face. "Whatever happens tonight, we leave as a team. You don't have to carry your family's baggage alone anymore." His voice was steady, the kind of calm that made me believe I could actually do this. I wanted so badly to tell him everything then, the forged signatures I had discovered on some old loan documents, the missing funds from the sustainability grant, the late-night calls from creditors that somehow always got redirected to my phone. But I didn't, not yet. I still hoped the wedding would be one day without shadows. The ceremony itself was pure magic. Marcus's vows were simple and heartfelt. He spoke about how I taught him that real strength looks like quiet determination and how my love felt like coming home to the best vintage. When I said "I do," my voice didn't waver. For those minutes under the oak tree with the sun setting behind the hills, I let myself believe that maybe this time the family would choose joy over old patterns. But as soon as the reception began, the temperature shifted. Vanessa was everywhere, laughing too loudly, hugging guests like she was the host, and directing staff with that effortless authority she had practiced since we were kids. I watched her from across the room as she spoke with the new bartender, the one whose name wasn't on our final list. He nodded at something she said, then looked straight at me for a split second too long. My stomach tightened, but I kept my expression soft. I had learned that showing fear only gave her more power. Sophie pulled me aside near the dessert table. She just slipped something to the DJ about an extra surprise presentation, and that group chat, the one with all the cousins and aunts, is blowing up with some weird message about trust fund mismanagement. It has your name on it. I took a slow breath. The old Elena would have rushed to explain herself, to fix things, to make everyone comfortable again. But the woman in the wedding dress that night had spent months quietly gathering proof. I had scanned documents, saved emails, and even started recording certain phone calls after I noticed discrepancies in the vineyard accounts. Instead of panicking, I smiled at Sophie. "Forward me everything and tell Marcus I might need him soon, but not yet. Let her think she's still in control." That was the moment the night truly turned for me. Fear became focus. Her moves stopped feeling like surprises and started looking like pieces of a puzzle I had already been solving. I moved through the crowd with a calm I didn't fully feel, accepting his and hugs and congratulations while my mind stayed sharp. When Vanessa approached me near the head table, champagne in hand, her eyes had that familiar sparkle, the one that usually meant she was about to strike. "You look beautiful, little sister," she said, leaning in for a hug that felt more like a cage. "Try to relax tonight. You've always been so tense about everything." Her fingers brushed my glass as she pulled away. I waited. If you've ever smiled at someone while your heart was racing because you knew what they were capable of, you understand the strange power in that silence. I wasn't passive anymore. I was strategic. And as the music swelled and guests moved toward the dance floor, I felt the quiet strength that had been growing inside me for years finally settle into place. Whatever Vanessa had planned, I was no longer the little sister who would simply absorb the blow. I was ready to switch the glass, and ready for whatever came after. The first real move came during the cocktail hour, when the sun had just dipped behind the hills, and the string lights turned the vineyard into something magical. I was standing with Marcus, his hand warm on my lower back, when Sophie found me again. Her face was tight in a way that didn't match the celebration around us. "Elena, that family group chat just got another message," she whispered, holding her phone low. "It's from an unknown number, but the tone is pure Vanessa. It says, you've been moving money from the trust into a personal account, and that the Sustainable Wine Project was a cover. They attached a screenshot of a transfer with your name, highlighted in red." My heart didn't race the way it used to. Instead, a cold clarity settled over me. I had seen that transfer before. It was real, but completely twisted. 2 years ago, after heavy winter storms damaged several rows of our oldest vines, I had authorized emergency repairs using trust funds. My father had co-signed, the insurance company reimbursed every dollar, and the documentation was airtight. Vanessa had taken the legitimate record, cropped out the context, and turned it into a weapon. If you've ever had someone take your good intentions and twist them into proof of betrayal, you know how disorienting that feels. Type twisted, if you've lived it. I asked Sophie to screenshot everything and forward it to me without replying. "Don't engage yet," I told her. "She's building a story. Let her think it's working." Across the room, Vanessa was laughing with our aunts, but her eyes kept flicking toward the projector setup near the dance floor. That was when I noticed the bartender again, the man whose name tag read Alex, but who wasn't on any of our approved vendor lists. He moved with too much purpose, glancing at Vanessa every few minutes like they shared a secret. I excused myself from Marcus with a gentle squeeze of his hand and walked toward the bar under the pretense of getting water. As I approached, I heard Alex mutter something low to a server about the special presentation at 9:15. My stomach tightened, but I kept my posture relaxed, the same way I had learned to walk through difficult tastings with difficult clients. Vanessa had always been strategic. She didn't do anything impulsively. Every charming smile, every helpful suggestion over the years had layers. I remembered one flashback that still stung, 6 months earlier, when I had confronted her privately about missing grant money for the sustainability program. She had tilted her head, given me that sympathetic look, and said, "Elena, you've always been so paranoid about details. Maybe you're just overwhelmed. Let me handle the big picture." That conversation was the moment I started quietly copying documents and saving timestamps, not out of revenge but out of survival. Back at the reception, I moved through the crowd like nothing was wrong. Guests kept telling me how beautiful the wedding was, how lucky I was. I smiled and thanked them, but my mind was mapping Vanessa's moves. She had spent the last few weeks asking innocent-sounding questions about the slideshow, the music cues, even the backup generator for the projector. Now it all made sense. She wasn't just trying to embarrass me. She was trying to dismantle my credibility in front of the entire family and our biggest business contacts. If she could make me look unstable or dishonest on my wedding night, who would trust my decisions about the vineyard going forward? The trust clause from Grandma would be easier to challenge. The business partners who had started favoring my sustainable approach might second-guess everything. Marcus found me near the floral arch. His eyes searched mine. "Something's off, isn't it?" I nodded once, keeping my voice low. "Vanessa is planning something with the projector and possibly more. I switched our glasses earlier because I saw her put something in mine. She doesn't know yet." His jaw tightened, but he didn't panic. That's one of the things I love most about him. He doesn't rush to fix my battles. He stands beside me while I fight them. "What do you need from me?" "Stay close, but let me lead, and in about 10 minutes, I may need you and Sophie near the projector." He kissed my forehead. "You've got this, Elena. We've got this." That quiet support gave me strength. I had spent years believing I had to handle family problems alone so I wouldn't cause drama. Tonight I was learning that real strength includes knowing when to let the right people stand with you. Meanwhile, Vanessa was getting bolder. I watched her slip away toward the barn office where the technical equipment was stored. When she returned, her expression was too satisfied. She caught my eye across the room and raised her glass in a private toast, mouthing the words "big surprise" with that familiar smirk. I raised my water in return and smiled back, calm, steady, unafraid. The old Elena would have confronted her immediately, desperate to keep the peace. The woman I had become knew that peace without truth is just delayed chaos, so I waited, I watched, I prepared. Sophie came back with more updates. The fake bartender had been seen receiving a small envelope from Vanessa earlier. Another cousin had asked me directly about the group chat message, voice full of concern. I answered gently, "There's a lot of misinformation tonight, everything will be clear soon. Please just enjoy the evening." My calm seemed to confuse people more than panic would have. Curiosity replaced suspicion for many. That mattered. Inside, my mind was racing through the evidence I had brought in that emergency folder, full transaction records with insurance backups, emails with my father's signatures, timestamps showing when Vanessa had accessed restricted accounts. I had even asked our longtime lawyer, Margaret, to stay on call in case things escalated. Vanessa thought she was the only one who knew how to plan. She had no idea how thoroughly I had learned to protect what mattered. As the clock ticked closer to 9:15, I felt the shift inside me. The quiet little sister was gone. In her place stood a woman who had decided that protecting her future, and the legacy Grandma had trusted her with, was worth whatever came next. If you've ever had to prepare in silence while someone you loved sharpened their knife, you understand the strange mix of sadness and power in that moment. I wasn't excited for the confrontation. I was ready for the truth. And the truth was coming faster than Vanessa realized. I moved quietly toward the head table, my white dress brushing softly against the wooden floor. The music was lively, guests were dancing, but my focus stayed sharp. That's when I saw Vanessa approach my original champagne glass again, the one I had already switched. She didn't notice the change. She simply smiled, satisfied, and walked away to greet more guests. 30 minutes had passed since she dropped that packet into the bubbles. I watched her closely now. Her steps were still graceful, but her fingers had started to tremble just slightly when she picked up the microphone for what she called a special sibling toast. Her forehead glistened under the lights. Whatever she had intended for me was beginning to work on her instead. If you've ever watched someone reap exactly what they tried to sow, you know that quiet, complicated feeling. Part of me felt sad, another part felt free. She tapped the microphone and the room quieted. "I just want to say how proud I am of my little sister Elena tonight," she began, her voice still mostly steady but with a new edge. "She's always been the responsible one, the one Grandma trusted with so many details. But family should be honest, right? Especially on a night like this." That was her cue. The projector screen behind her lit up with the folder, "The Truth About Elena." A few people clapped, thinking it was a fun surprise. The first slide showed the cropped bank transfer, the one that made it look like I had stolen from the trust. Gasps rippled through the room. My mother's hand flew to her chest. My father frowned deeply. Vanessa smiled wider, feeding off the energy. "I didn't want to do this tonight, but I love my sister too much to let her start a marriage on secrets." She clicked to the next slide, a photo of me leaving the lawyer's office, taken without my knowledge. Then another message. "Questions about the vineyard's future need answers." The room grew tense. I felt eyes on me, some confused, some already judging. The old version of me would have stepped forward immediately, voice shaking, trying to explain. But I stayed still for a few more seconds, letting her dig the hole deeper. I wanted every guest to see the full shape of what she was doing. Marcus stood beside me, his presence solid and calm. Sophie was already moving discreetly toward the projector table with the flash drive I had prepared. I gave her the smallest nod. Vanessa's voice grew stronger as she continued. "The sustainable project Elena pushed so hard for, it was a front. Money disappeared, and now she's trying to take full control of the vineyard that our family built together." Her hand shook noticeably on the microphone now. Sweat beaded above her lip. She tried to hide it by gesturing dramatically, but the drug was clearly affecting her balance and focus. I stepped forward slowly, my voice calm and clear, carrying through the barn without needing the mic. "Vanessa, if we're doing honesty tonight, let's do all of it." She laughed, but it came out strained. Elena, please, don't make this worse for yourself. That was the moment. Sophie inserted the flash drive. The screen changed. The full uncropped documents appeared, the storm damage reports, insurance reimbursements, my father's original signatures, and the email chain proving every step had been approved. I looked straight at my sister. You cropped the truth to make it a lie, but here's the complete picture. Whispers turned into murmurs. My father leaned forward, squinting at the screen. That's my signature, he said quietly, but loud enough for those nearby to hear. Vanessa's eyes widened. She tried to click to the next slide, but Sophie had control now. The next documents were ones I had prepared, records of unauthorized account access from Vanessa's IP address, timestamps from the Vineyard security system showing her late-night logins, and copies of emails where she had redirected creditor calls to me. But I wasn't done. I turned to the guests, my tone steady and reflective. For years I stayed quiet because I thought that's what family meant. I thought love meant making myself smaller so Vanessa could shine brighter. But silence doesn't protect anyone, it only gives room for more harm. If you've ever carried the weight of keeping family secrets to preserve peace, you know how heavy that becomes. Type silent no more if you're done carrying it too. Vanessa's face flushed deeper, partly from anger, partly from whatever was in that drink. She gripped the table for support. This is ridiculous. She's manipulating everything. That's when I signaled for the next layer. Sophie tapped her phone, and our lawyer Margaret's voice came through the speakers, calm and authoritative. She had been on standby exactly for this. For the record, Elena Voss has managed the trust within its guidelines. The documents Vanessa presented are incomplete and misleading. My office has also been investigating unauthorized access to financial records for several months. The room went completely still. Vanessa tried to speak, but her words slurred slightly. She looked at our parents, then at me, her perfect mask finally cracking. The bartender, Alex, had already been quietly escorted away by venue security after Sophie showed them the evidence I had gathered. I hadn't raised my voice once. I hadn't cried or accused wildly. I simply laid out the truth, piece by piece, like carefully uncorking a bottle that had been sealed for too long. Vanessa had planned a public execution of my reputation. Instead, she had walked into her own unraveling. The jealousy that started as small comments had grown into forgery, financial manipulation, and now this desperate attempt to drug me so I would look emotional and unstable during her slideshow. She had underestimated how much I had learned to prepare in silence. As the projector continued showing the full story, grant discrepancies, forged vendor contracts under the Vineyard name, and even messages where she had badmouthed me to business partners, I felt something shift inside my chest. Not triumph exactly, but a deep, quiet release. The little sister who had spent years orbiting her son was finally stepping into her own light. And the night was only halfway through. Vanessa's grip on the microphone tightened as the full document stayed on the screen. The room felt heavier now, like the air itself was holding its breath. Her usual confidence was slipping away with every second the drug worked through her system. She tried to laugh it off again, but the sound came out shaky. Elena is twisting things, she said, her voice losing its polish. She's always been jealous of the real work I do for this family. I stepped closer to the projector table, my wedding dress moving gracefully with me. No rushing, no shouting, just steady, deliberate movement. Marcus stood right beside me, a quiet anchor. Sophie had the laptop fully under control now. I looked out at the guests, at my parents, at our aunts and uncles, at the business partners who had come to celebrate, and spoke from a place deeper than anger. Vanessa wanted tonight to be about my secrets, I said calmly. So let's talk about the ones that actually matter. The ones that affect every person in this room who has invested time, trust, or money into Voss family vineyards. Sophie clicked to the next set of files I had prepared months ago. These weren't just about the trust anymore. The screen showed copies of forged loan documents. Vanessa's signature appeared next to our father's, except he had been recovering from surgery the week those loans were dated. Another document revealed a line of credit opened against Vineyard equipment using our mother's maiden name without her knowledge. The amounts weren't small. They had grown quietly over 2 years, hidden behind emergency business expenses. Gasps spread through the barn. My father stood up slowly, his face pale. Vanessa, what is this? She swayed slightly, trying to steady herself on the table. Dad, I was going to fix it. The investments didn't go as planned, but I had everything under control. I didn't interrupt her panic. I let her words hang in the air so everyone could hear how they sounded. Desperate, entitled, familiar. If you've ever watched someone you loved finally run out of excuses, you know how complicated that moment feels. There's sadness for what the relationship could have been, and relief that the truth is finally free. Type "truth hurts" if you've been there. Margaret's voice came through the speakers again, crisp and professional. I can confirm that several unauthorized financial actions have been traced back to Vanessa Voss over the past 18 months. This includes forged authorizations and misappropriation of funds meant for vineyard operations and employee benefits. Elena has been the one flagging these issues and protecting the business. The projector continued. More evidence, emails where Vanessa had bad-mouthed the sustainable program to our biggest client while pretending to support it publicly. Messages to creditors promising payments she never intended to make from the family accounts. And worst of all, a series of texts showing she had planned this night for weeks, coordinating with the fake bartender Alex to spike my drink so I would appear emotional and unreliable when the slideshow began. Vanessa's eyes darted around the room, looking for someone to rescue her, but the charm that had always worked before found no landing place tonight. Our mother was crying quietly. Several cousins who had received the group chat messages were now staring at her with disbelief. She turned to me, her voice cracking. "You were supposed to be the quiet one. Grandma gave you that stupid clause because she pitied you. I was the face of this vineyard. I deserved to run it. You took everything from me." There it was, the real root, not love, not protection, just ownership and jealousy. I met her gaze without flinching. "I didn't take anything, Vanessa. Grandma trusted me with responsibility because she saw how I cared for the vines when no one was watching. You saw the vineyard as something to use. I saw it as something to protect. That's the difference." The room was silent except for the soft hum of the projector. I continued, my voice steady but laced with the weight of years. "You didn't just try to humiliate me tonight. You tried to drug me so I would break down in front of everyone. You replaced our bartender, fed lies to our family, and planned to destroy my reputation on the one night I should have felt safest. All because you were afraid the truth about your actions would finally come out." Alex, the fake bartender, had been brought back in by security. He looked at the floor and muttered, "She paid me extra to make sure the drink went in, and the slideshow started on time. She said it would just make you emotional, not dangerous." That confession landed like a stone in still water. My father stepped forward, his voice rough with disappointment. "Vanessa, you put something in your own sister's drink? At her wedding?" Vanessa tried one last time to regain control. She pointed at me, her hand shaking badly now. "She's the one." But her legs wobbled. She grabbed the table for support as the full effects hit her. The same substance she had meant for me to swallow in front of 200 people was now exposing her instead. I didn't feel joy in her collapse. I felt the heavy sadness of a bridge burning that had been damaged for years, but I also felt something cleaner, boundaries finally drawn. Sophie quietly stopped the slideshow. I took the microphone for the first time that night. My hands were steady. "I didn't want this to happen on my wedding day," I said softly, looking around the room. "But I also couldn't let another year of silence protect lies that were hurting our family and our business. Some of you believed the messages in the group chat. I understand why. We've all been conditioned to see Vanessa as the shining one, but tonight the truth has a different light. If you've ever had to choose between keeping fake peace and protecting what's real, you know how lonely that choice can feel in the moment, and how freeing it becomes later. I see you in the comments, you're not alone." Marcus squeezed my hand. His presence reminded me why I had fought so hard to get here. This wasn't just about winning, it was about refusing to let someone else write the next chapter of my life. Vanessa looked at me one last time, her perfect facade completely gone. In her eyes, I saw the little girl who once shared secrets with me under the vines, and the woman who had chosen resentment over repair. She whispered something I barely caught. "You were always in the way." I replied gently, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "No, Vanessa, I was never in the way. I was simply standing in my own place, and tonight I'm no longer willing to shrink so you can feel bigger." Security moved in quietly as venue staff alerted authorities. The night had shifted completely. What Vanessa planned as my public downfall became the moment the family finally saw the truth that had been hiding in plain sight for years. The little sister had spoken, and this time everyone listened. After the authorities arrived and took statements, the barn grew quiet in a way that felt both heavy and honest. Vanessa was escorted out calmly. No dramatic scene, just the quiet consequences of choices that had been building for years. She didn't look back. I stood there in my wedding dress, the fabric still pristine, and felt the weight of the night settle differently on my shoulders. Not as a burden anymore, but as a chapter finally closing. My father approached me slowly, his eyes red. He pulled me into a hug that carried decades of unspoken regret. "I failed both of you," he whispered. "But especially you, Elena. I let her shine so bright that I stopped seeing how much you were carrying." For the first time, I let myself cry in his arms, not the broken kind of tears, but the releasing kind. My mother joined us, her hands trembling as she touched my cheek. "I'm so sorry. I thought keeping quiet was protecting the family." Her voice broke. "I was wrong." I didn't rush to comfort them the way I once would have. I simply nodded. "We all have choices to make now. Tonight was mine." If you've ever had to hold space for your own healing, while the people who hurt you begin to see their mistakes, you know how delicate that balance is. It doesn't happen in one perfect conversation. It happens in small, honest moments like these. Sophie brought me a glass of water, real water this time, and hugged me fiercely. "You were incredible," she said, "not because you won, because you stayed you. Marcus never left my side." When the crowd gave us a little space, he pulled me into the bridal suite for a few quiet minutes. He held me as the shaking finally came, the adrenaline giving way to exhaustion and relief. "You switched the glass," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You prepared everything, and you did it with so much grace. I'm so proud to be your husband." In that moment, wrapped in his arms, I felt the real victory, not the exposure of Vanessa's lies, but the deep knowing that I was no longer defined by my family's old patterns. I had chosen truth over silence, boundaries over false peace, and love over fear. Later, my father handed me a sealed envelope. "Your grandmother left this with Margaret. She said I'd know when the time was right to give it to you." Inside was a handwritten note in Grandma's elegant script, along with an updated trust summary. The note read, "Elena, my patient one, the vines teach us that strength isn't loud, it's consistent. You've always had that. Don't ever dim yourself to make others comfortable. The vineyard and your future are safest in hands that truly care. I've restricted certain accesses. Use your voice. It's time." Tears fell freely as I read it. Marcus read over my shoulder and kissed the top of my head. That letter wasn't just validation, it was permission I had waited years to feel. The rest of the night wasn't perfect, but it was real. We cut the cake, we danced our first dance under the soft lights, surrounded by guests who now looked at me with new respect. Some apologized quietly, others simply squeezed my hand in silent support. The music played, laughter returned in gentle waves, and for the first time in a long time, the vineyard felt like it could breathe. Months later, the legal process moved forward carefully. Vanessa lost her decision-making power in the trust. The family began real conversations about accountability and healing. Slow, imperfect, but honest. I kept my promise to myself. I didn't shrink back. I stepped fully into the role Grandma had trusted me with, growing the sustainable practices I loved while protecting what mattered. If you've ever had a family member smile in public while hurting you in private, remember this: you don't have to scream to be strong. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is switch the glass, save the proof, speak the truth calmly, and let consequences follow. You deserve peace that isn't built on secrets. So tell me in the comments, would you have switched the glasses and waited, or handled it differently? Type boundaries if this story reminded you of your own quiet strength. Type healing if you're choosing truth in your own life right now. I read every comment. Your stories matter to me. Thank you for sitting with me through this. If this resonated, please share it with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. Subscribe for more calm, powerful stories about real-life courage, family, and finding your voice. Turn on notifications so we can keep these conversations going. Your next chapter can still be beautiful, even after the hardest nights.